Good evening. Let us join together in consciousness as we begin this evening's service. There is one infinite power, one divine presence, one creative energy or vibration that permeates all life everywhere. It is all that exists. As we relax into this moment and come together, we do so with open minds and know that this time together truly is a gift. Acknowledging this and remembering this, I move into a place of receptivity and acceptance that all is well. And I let that be the journey for this next hour. In grace and gratitude, I release this into the law of mind. It is done, and so it is. Kathy?
Hi, everyone. My name's Kathy Whitehead, and our land acknowledgement is we work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe and Wendat peoples, and more recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit and Haudenosaunee nations. As we gather from many places on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. Although I am not a person of African descent, I'm committed to continually acting in support of and in solidarity with Black communities seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact Black communities in Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge those who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In support of our ongoing efforts to confront anti-Black racism, we pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. We also acknowledge the contributions made, both in shaping and strengthening our community. By making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Our vision is transforming humanity through the emergence of the sacred, authentic self. Our mission is to welcome you as you are, where you are, without judgment or criticism, providing a sacred place of learning and growing as you seek to achieve your greatest dreams. We accomplish this by offering Science of Mind classes, social events, inspiring workshops, thought-provoking services, and practitioner support. We honor the revelation of your emerging sacred authentic self through our positive messaging and loving support. And now over to Rev. Emmy.
And good evening. And it is now time for our meditation. And so, grounding yourself with a couple of breaths, awakening our consciousness collectively, right here and now. Settle in and relax. Make yourself comfortable. And let these words wash over you. I know there is a power for good, which is responding to me and bringing into my experience everything that is necessary to my unfoldment, to my happiness, to my peace, to my health, and to my success. I know there is a power for good that enables me to help others and to bless the whole world. There is one life, that life is God, and that life is perfect. That life is my life now. It is flowing through me, circulating in me. I am one with its rhythm. My heart beats with the pulsation of the universe, in serenity, in peace, and in joy. My whole physical being is animated by the divine spirit. And if there is anything in it that does not belong, it is cast out, because there is one perfect life in me now. I am daily guided so that I shall know what to do, every circumstance, in every situation. Divine intelligence guides me in love, in joy, and in complete self-expression. Desiring that the law of good alone shall control me, I bless and prosper everything I am doing. I multiply every activity. I accept and expect happiness and complete success. Realizing that I am one with all people, I affirm that there is a silent power flowing through me and everyone and everything on this planet, which blesses and heals and prospers, makes happy and glad their pathway. And realizing that the world is made up of people like myself, I bless the world and affirm that it shall come under the divine infinite good, under the divine providence of love, and under the divine leadership of the supreme intelligence. All the power, all the glory forever. And we anchor this in peace and joy and comfort for all. Together we say, and so it is. Namaste. And now I invite you to get comfortable as we listen to Reverend Barbara take us forward into the talk of the evening. Enjoy. Reverend Barbara.
Thanks, Rev Emmy. I'm so grateful to you for doing that for me and doing a wonderful meditation. And thank you, Kathy, for giving us our land acknowledgement and our vision and mission. Well, tonight we're talking about vulnerability, defining and aligning. And it's interesting because I think there's a resistance to vulnerability. There's a fear about it, that if I'm vulnerable, I come across as weak. And I'm here to say that vulnerability is power. That vulnerability is an honest expression of the authentic self. And it actually is a courageous act to be willing to open our minds and hearts to each other in a way that would create that. Ram Dass wrote, "As we play at the edge of our pain, gently opening, acknowledging, and allowing, the suffering it has caused diminishes. If we further dissolve the boundaries, letting ourselves enter into the pain and the pain enter into us, we can see the possibility of going beyond it to where the heart is freer. We've never been so vulnerable, so defenseless, and yet somehow so safe. The surrender we were so frightened of turns out to be not defeat, but a kind of victory. I love that. I love that quote, because when we become vulnerable and that pain begins to come up, that fear of allowing ourselves to be fully seen, when we get in that place of doubting who we are and what we bring to the earth at this time, what we bring to humanity, there's a fear that comes up that can stop and block us. And being vulnerable moves us beyond that. Vulnerability, as Brene Brown says, is not a weakness. She defines vulnerability as emotional risk, exposure, uncertainty, and it fuels our daily lives. It is our most accurate measurement of courage. It is the birthplace, and this is the important part, birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. And when we're most vulnerable, when we're experiencing shame, right? Anybody here ever feel shame? I'm sure we all have at some point in time or another. The thing is that the idea of shame is kind of an interesting one because it doesn't, well, it's our personal feeling about something. And oftentimes when we finally share it and the person that we're speaking with or the group we're speaking with receive it, not with angst or saying, hey, you're bad and wrong, get away from me, but rather just being with us in a loving state, what happens is we move out of that immense pain. Shame is, it's not that I've done something wrong, that's guilt. Shame is I am wrong, I am bad. And what we want to do is realize that most of the judgment that we have going on is inside our own heads. The criticism that we face more often than not is our own. It's not even something that's happening in the moment. So when we come to a place of going, wow, I can't share this, or I can't really open up to my loved ones because if I do, I will be judged. Just by having that thought, the judge has already been to work, and that's been us. We've been judging our lives and what it is. I remember when I got married to Pierre, and we met with his parents, Catholic parents, and Pierre mentioned to them that I'd been married before. And we just left it at that. We let them make the assumption that married before meant I'd been married once before. We didn't let them know that, Pierre was lucky number 5. Now that for me was a big shame piece. And I remember years ago speaking at a church here in Toronto, and I was talking on Mother's Day, and I was talking about the journey of, being a woman and being a mother and the ups and downs of that. And at some point in time, I mentioned that I'd been married 5 times, and there was this collective whispering that happened in the room, people going, what did she just say? And then immediately I followed it up by saying, I was giving Liz Taylor a run for her money, but I fell short. So then there was a lot of laughter. The thing is, the things that we're ashamed of is because we've decided what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, and we're holding ourselves back. What we want to do is sit in our own pain, acknowledge what it is that we're going through, feel it, just like Ram Dass said so eloquently, as we play at the edge of our pain, gently opening, acknowledging, and allowing. The suffering it has caused diminishes. When I first spoke about how many times I'd been married, when I survived that, when I got off the podium that day, I had easily 10 or 15 women come up and talk to me, many of them with tears in their eyes going, thank you. That's the most honest sermon I've ever heard. And I thought, wow, here I was coming off the podium thinking, they're never going to have me back, right? Like they're going to see me as this horrible sinner. I think sometimes we are so self-critical that we are unable to actually move forward in life or to really create lasting, bonding, loving relationships because we are stuck in this place of what's right and wrong and good and bad, rather than realizing that we're all human beings, that we're all having life. And you cannot be courageous without being vulnerable. And just think about the books that we read, the movies that we watch, those inspiring movies that show people overcoming hardship. We've all watched them or read the books, and we see that, what the person has gone through and how they've come out the other side. And we're thinking, wow, check that. Talk about courageous. What a journey. But the truth is that every single one of us at some point in time or another has felt shame, has been in a place of vulnerability. Remember when you fell in love, if you have, who's going to be first to say it? Sometimes there's a fear in that, like, what if I say it and they don't respond? What if they don't say it back? What if they're not feeling what I'm feeling? Or maybe we're at work and we get called into the boss's office. And I know for me years ago, the first thing that came to mind was, oh no, what did I do? And I'd start checking, did I make any mistakes recently? Did I do something wrong? There was a fear that somehow there was something about me that wasn't acceptable. And that's what I was going to hear in that meeting. The journey that we're on as we begin to wake up, especially as we awaken to our spirituality, it requires that we face life, all of it, the things that we judge as good or bad, to sit in each moment and allow ourselves to feel the feelings and to share from our heart space, to allow that pain to dissolve as we acknowledge and recognize it and release our fear of it. I remember years ago having a really challenging time. It was shortly after I moved here, and I was lonely and work was challenging, and there was just a lot going on. And I was feeling really emotional, and of course didn't feel like I could really be that way in my work for sure. And I found a tape series. It was back in the days of cassette tapes. But I found this series from Carolyn Myss called Spiritual Madness. And it was the perfect remedy at that time. And really what she talked about was this whole idea of being with the pain. And the message that I got from that series was that by sitting in the pain, allowing it to be without resistance, not trying to push it away, make it go away, but rather just being with it honestly. I'm lonely. I'm sad right now, and maybe I'm a bit depressed. Feeling that, not judging it, but just sitting in it. And what occurred was a transformation that for me was quite shocking at the time, because within probably less than 24 hours, I was feeling on top of the world. When we acknowledge where we really are and allow ourselves to be there without judgment, be vulnerable, be honest with you, be honest with yourself. In the moment that we do that, we feel what we're feeling, and then the pain dissipates. The thing about our human experience is that things are changing constantly. Nothing's held in place forever. It's this evolution, things come and things go. When you sit back and think about the things that we're ashamed of, or you've heard of the imposter syndrome or whatever, there's stories we've been telling ourselves. And I was thinking about, there's kind of a difference in the shame category between men and women. Women feel almost like they have to be, Supergirl, Superwoman, whatever superhero name we want to give her. And, she needs to be able to, cook the meals and clean the house and go to work and look after the kids, and needs to do it all perfectly. Right? Perfectly. And of course, the interesting thing about perfection is, having been one in the past and knowing many through my journey, the interesting thing about perfectionism is that whenever we get close to hitting that bar, we just raise it. We just raise it. There's another way that we find that we're maybe falling short or not being good enough. And I think the big story is that we haven't accepted that we are good enough. And when we come to a place of going, wait a minute, I'm just going to do my best. I don't have to be perfect. I just need to do my best. And doing your best means that you show up every day wherever you are. On the day when you're feeling, sad and lonely, well, your best is going to be kind of down here a bit, but that's okay. And when you're having a great day and you've just landed a big contract, or you've fallen in love, or whatever great thing has happened to you, the sun is shining and the air is bright and tulips are blooming, whatever it is, our best is elevated. When we feel joy, our best is elevated. Perfectionism is different because you can never quite get there. And the truth is, we were all created perfect, whole, and complete. And if we come to understand our own natural perfection as spiritual beings having this human existence, we would be much more forgiving of the errors that we make or the challenges that we face. This journey is one about being present in life. Now, the difference with men, it's a little bit different. And I think part of it is that we as women can be quite hard on men sometimes, maybe often. We want them to be strong and invincible, right? Want them to be the rock. They've got to be able to, hold down the fort and keep things organized and straight. And often they too are feeling shame because they don't feel they're living up to our expectations of them. Now, whether it's our expectation or if they think it's our expectation, either way, that shame can fit in, and all of a sudden there's a pulling back, there's a withdrawing, and we stop meeting each other really where we are. So we're not building bridges, we're creating separation because of these feelings of shame. In the moment that we get vulnerable, in the moment that we get raw, in the moment that we'll look at the people around us and go, wow, I feel like crap today. I'm here, I'm awake, I'm alive, but I don't feel good. There's something in that if we can sit with each other in that moment and express empathy and kindness and compassion in that moment and just allow that person to share wherever they're at, there's a great strength in that for both. The ability to sit with somebody who's in pain and struggling, but also for the person who's sharing to be able to be heard, to be seen, and to be valued right where they are. That's the work. We talk here all the time about healing our lives, and how we heal our lives is really, we've got work to do. And a big part of that work is honoring where we are at the moment. Okay. Some of us are having a great day today and on top of the world, and some of us might be feeling kind of low and down and depressed and upset, sad or lonely. Wherever we are, that is where we are. And it's the place where we must begin our journey. We can't begin at the end point because it doesn't exist. There's a lot of shame in our world right now. There's a lot of anger and angst, and I think it's coming from, people lost their jobs, or some people got vaccinated, some people didn't, some lost people through COVID. There's been a lot of things happen over these last 3 years that have deepened that level within many people. And what we need to do is find a way to come together, to talk, to acknowledge that we're feeling sad, or we're feeling lonely, or we're feeling hurt or desperate, or whatever's going on, and to make a safe place for us to have those conversations where we can go, wow, here's just where I'm at. Here's what's going on. And if we can sit with it, then we know there's possibility, right? It's in the moment that somebody hears us and acknowledges us and just says, me too. There's a connection that happens that can be really, really profound. Theodore Roosevelt had a quote about daring greatly, and he said that it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows with the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. I love that. I mean, we've all failed at something. We've all experiencing something that we're not happy about, or we think, wow, why did that happen to me? Or why is this going on? We've all been there. And somehow we've survived it. But if we're hiding it, if we're holding it back, then we're building a wall between us and the rest of the world. And what we're seeking is seeking us. Like if we're seeking connection, we cannot connect if we have concrete walls between our hearts and the next person. There has to be a willingness to be vulnerable, to drop the wall, to be present with what is, and to be who we are as we are and where we are. What I love about the Science Mind teaching is that it teaches us a way through. It teaches us how to be present, but also how to take the tools that we teach here and begin to create from the ground up or from the basement while we rebuild and restructure our lives in a way that takes us to a better place. And it all starts with our self-love, with our willingness to accept ourselves as we are. There are people in this world who have been told that who you are is wrong and bad, whether it's because of the color of the skin, the country of birth, the parents of origin, the language spoken, whether it's the sexual orientation, gender identity. There are so many ways that we have found to create the story of them and us. But what if we stopped that? What if we decided here today, at least with this group, that we would begin where we are to be compassionate, starting with ourselves? What is it about you that you don't want me to see? What is it about you that you wouldn't want your neighbor to see, or your spouse, or your best friend, or your parents, or your siblings? And could you find it in your heart to have that conversation? My children, I have 4 children, 3 of them born in the month of March. Yay, busy month. And I have taken time with each of them. My other son was born in December, so, but I've taken time this month to have conversations with 2 of those 3 children at a really deep level, to talk about the things that I believed I did wrong, the ways in which I thought that I caused harm, to let them know how loved they are, how precious they are to me, and to sit with them and to cry with them and to just be raw and real with them. And what's wonderful is, I don't know a mom or a dad out there who hasn't made a mistake. I really don't. And we don't need to carry that forever. I know for me, and I'm sure for anyone else who's had the experience, that, we do the best that we can with what we know. I know my parents did the best they could from where they came from and what they knew. And I know that I tried to do the best as well. Now, my best fell short when it came to raising my children, I believe. And that comes from my perception of what a perfect mother would look like, and maybe from their perception of maybe what they didn't get that they needed. Now, I'm blessed to have a wonderful relationship with all 4 of my children, and I'm really grateful for that. And at the same time, there's a part of me that, still occasionally will wish I'd done better, that I could have seen their unique and precious self more easily, that I hadn't tried to change them, but just accepted them as they are, where they are. But of course, today, I have a different outlook. So with my grandchildren and my youngest daughter, who just turned 18, I can be a little different with them. I can find ways to just honor them where they are without trying to change them. And even with my older children, they're adults, who sit back and acknowledge their grace and their beauty and their magnificence, and tell them that often. My eldest daughter turned 50 on March 17th, and I sent her a video, and I was trying to do a funny one. She lives in Calgary, and I wanted to create a funny video, and I started doing it, and I started singing silly, and all of a sudden I was so raw and I began to cry. And I shared with her, she was born when I was 16. I was a baby. Believe me, I made a lot of mistakes. But in sharing that video with her, I was able to tell her how grateful I am that I was willing to have her, that I was willing to do whatever needed to happen to bring her into my life and into my world, and that everything that she's brought me since then has been such a remarkable blessing. This journey of life and living isn't about doing it right and doing it perfect. It's about showing up. And showing up moment by moment with the good and the bad of it, right? We're here to experience life and living. We're not here to be these perfect robots that just put in time. We're here to live, and living sometimes gets messy. And I know 3 years ago, when one of my ex-husbands passed away, he'd been a very, very dear friend of mine. He's father of my sons. And it was really tough watching him go. He was only 62. And it was, it was raw that, one day he was out golfing with our son, and the next day he's a quadriplegic and can't breathe on his own. And he's choosing to go. It was really hard to watch. But what was fascinating about that journey was the way he was with everybody at the end. Every doctor, every nurse, didn't matter how painful the procedures were. Every time they came in, every time they left, he said, "Thank you, I love you." And I thought, wow, that's pretty remarkable. Somebody in so much pain, whose life was just stripped away in a heartbeat, still finding it essential to share love and light with the people around him. And, I could understand if he'd been angry or hurt or upset, but there was none of that. It was really, really quite lovely. And that journey for my sons was, of course, challenging. They're losing their dad, and they're just young men themselves. So when we look at life, life is full of moments. And every one of those moments is a builder of who we are or who we can become. And if we will take the moments and allow ourselves to feel them, not hide, not run, but be in it, be in the mud, be in the shit, be in the beauty, the joy, the blood, sweat, and tears of it, to acknowledge that we're human beings, right? We're spiritual beings having this human experience, but are we having it, or are we resisting it? Are we trying to show up so perfectly that everybody might like us? What if we just throw caution to the wind and go, you know what? Here I am. And some days I'm broken. Some days I'm raw. And some days I'm so filled with joy and excitement and delight and creativity that I'm exuberant and maybe a bit loud, and sometimes a bit obnoxious to my husband, because I have my little catchphrases that drive him a little bit. I say, "I'm going to go take a shower." I'm like, "Where are you going to take it to?" And he goes, but it makes me laugh that he's taking a deep sigh. We're here. We're here. We are here. I hope you heard that. We're here. We're here as spiritual beings and we're in this little finite container, or what appears to be a finite container. But the truth is, we are filled with infinite potential, that there is a power within us that is so far beyond anything we could have imagined. And we're created perfectly for the life that we've chosen to live this time around. And as we journey along and we trip and we fall and we stumble, and then we get up and we learn something from that. And from that, I had 2 marriages, my very first and my third, that were very violent marriages, very violent marriages. And I got through that, and it wasn't easy. And I hated life and I hated them for a long time. And it wasn't until I found this teaching that I sat back one day and went, wait a minute. My hate just breeds hate. My pain that I'm blaming on somebody else. And I mean, yes, they caused me great pain, but I had to in that moment go, what's my piece of this? I've done it twice. What is my piece? What can I do to change this? Because I knew I'm the only person who can change my life. And so I began reading, and I remember reading Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, and reading it every day and doing her affirmations and really anchoring those ideas and thoughts as deeply as possible. And then I started taking classes at the Center for Spiritual Living in Calgary and doing this work day by day and day by day. And what I knew in that moment, and I said to myself, and I promised myself, never again will somebody treat me that way. Never again. And interestingly, I did meet another man who kind of fit the same mold a couple of years later. And the first time he lost his temper, I got out of the car and said, lose my phone number. Don't ever call me again. I was clear, never again. Life is a journey that takes us somewhere, but it can only take us where we're willing to go. And when we're repeating patterns, we need to interrupt those patterns for ourselves. And the best way to do that is to begin to look at what we're experiencing, to honor where we are. And from the place that we are, go, you know what? I have the courage to stand in a new way. I have the willingness to be the person that I want to be. Nobody has said I have to be this way or that way. I decide. And I'm going to look at my gifts and my talents, and I'm going to honor them. And I'm going to share them. And I'm going to stand out rather than trying to fit in. I'm going to allow myself to be seen in the moments when I don't want anybody to see me, when I don't want them to see my tears and the fear that is bubbling up for whatever reason. I'm going to stand in that, and I'm going to let it flow. And when I feel really ashamed, I'm going to sit in that as well. And I'm going to explore it as I sit in it with a welcoming heart in the middle of that mud, as I'm sinking in, feeling like all is lost. I'm going to sit in it. And I'm going to cry, and I'm going to scream, and I'm going to curse. But I'm going to sit in it, and I'm going to let myself feel it. And as I'm feeling it, as I'm experiencing it, I'll take a breath and realize it has no power over me. It's merely a moment, a blip. And that once it's been felt, I can start to see how it's really irrelevant. I remember years ago writing in my journal, I was so angry. I was so angry. And I'm writing in my journal and I'm writing so hard that I'm actually tearing the paper with the pen, and I'm writing pages and pages and pages of self-loathing. I was so angry. And when I finished writing, I went to sleep, and I slept for hours. And I woke up the next day and I looked at my journal and I went, nope, not true. And I tore those pages out, and I went into the kitchen sink and I burned them. I burned every one. I went, not true. That is not true about me. That is not who I am. It was that moment of reprieve and release, a moment of going, yeah, life has been hard. Life was hard. And so it was. And me talking about doesn't make it any different. It was what it was at the time. And I can look back now and go, oh, thank God I'm where I am. I got here, but I got here because I made a decision, never again. Never again. I held to that decision. When I was at work and my boss was threatening to fire me, and I was like, whoa, that can't happen. I immediately stood up and went, what do I need to do different? What is it that he's telling me that I need to do? And I had to get over being angry and miserable all the time. People didn't really like working with me much because I was angry. So I had to let go of that. And by letting go of it, what I had to do was look at it. See, sometimes we've got to look at where we really are and stop lying to ourselves. Look at where you are and know that where you are does not define you. That's not who you are. It's where you are. You are created in the image likeness of this infinite potential, this infinite power, this one divine energy. And because you are that, in the moment that you go, whoa, wait a minute, this is an experience I'm having, and this too will pass, because everything in the manifest world does, right? Everything changes. I know we don't like change much, but some of it's good that it changes. Everything in the manifest world is subject to change. And it changes according to our belief system, according to our intentions. And as we allow ourselves to feel vulnerable and to move through that vulnerability, to feel whatever pain and struggle we're in and allow ourselves to get on the other side of it, what happens is the courage that it takes to do that makes us heroes, really. I mean, think about the books you read. Some of these books are about people overcoming the biggest obstacles. Why do we read those? Because it gives us hope. It gives us hope that we too could do something that would change our current reality, that we could look at life from a new vantage point, that we could begin to do something differently to allow ourselves to experience more joy. I think since COVID, we've seen a lot more anger and violence and all kinds of stuff going on in the world, lots of depression. And I think that comes from separation, because that's not good for us. We want to connect. But if we've built a wall around our heart, we can't connect. It's time to take the wall down. And that's vulnerability. It's sitting in the middle of that mud, that shit, whatever you want to call it, sitting in the middle of that mess, going, here's where I am. And I choose to be the person who courageously moves beyond it. I get to do that. I get to define my parameters. I get to define my next steps. I get to choose what's next in my life. I get to choose. You see, no one makes decisions for us unless we allow them to. And I did for a long time, until I said, never again. We get to decide. We get to decide. Robert Raines, a composer and writer, said, to go with the flow of your life is to live without a map, to be vulnerable to having your plans changed, your heart broken, your dreams unfulfilled. It is to trust that God is in the rapids of change as well as in the rocks of continuity. It is being able to stop digging your heels in against the tide of tomorrow. It is exercising a suppleness of spirit in which you respond to the nudgings and the promptings of grace, moment by moment, day by day, in a kind of lovemaking with life. I think of it as dancing with the universe, dancing with life, getting so that we move with the energy and the vibration of what is, not what we hope for, not what we regret, but what is. Where am I now? What is it that I need to do? Bono from U2 said, it is impossible to meet God without abandon, without exposing yourself, being raw. Wow. As we get into that rawness, into that essence of our current reality, as we live in that place, we see that it moves and it transforms and it allows, it heals and it opens and it expands. And we become all that we imagined that we could be. Because the truth is, we already are. Each and every one of us, unique and special. Unique and special. When we begin to live from that understanding, accepting that truth, when we begin to live from there, there's a freedom, there's a great opportunity that happens. But it does require that we move through the swamp. It's not our final destination. It's just a bump in the road. A moment where we can move from to something else. John Beiersdorf, a Presbyterian minister, said, when I think of persons I know who model for me the depths of spiritual life, I'm struck by their gentleness. They are gentle because they have faced the struggles given to them and have learned that personal survival is not the point. Their self-aggrandizement is no longer at stake. There's nothing in it for them. Their vulnerability has been stretched to clear-eyed sensitivity to others and truly selfless love. When we get raw, when we get real, when we get present, we also create a very sacred place of love for ourselves and everyone around us. We're on a journey without a destination. I invite you to be who you were created to be, and to know that every mistake you made has just helped you to grow into the person that you are now. Be forgiving, be loving, be accepting, because I know for a fact you are worth it. Thank you. And now we have a couple of announcements. I just have to figure out how to get the slideshow working here. Let's see. All right, I think I can do this. All right, so we have a class coming up called Spiritual Economics, and it starts on April the 13th. It's an 8-week class, and this class really is about transforming every area of your life, but definitely wealth is one of the pieces of that. So wealth, health, relationships, career, all of it is underneath this title of Spiritual Economics. It really is a freedom program that is going to assist you in ways that you couldn't even imagine before. It is remarkable. My Joy Show runs on Fridays, and it is 3 o'clock Friday afternoons, and I interview a variety of different people, and we talk about their lives, their inspiration, how they got where they're going. And this week, I'll be interviewing Enrico Colantoni, and we're going to talk about his spiritual journey that he's been on for these past number of years, and how that is creating the life that he's living and the joy that he's experiencing. So check in Friday. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, and it is on the New Thought Media Network. You can catch it on YouTube on our CSL on the Lake channel. And so I invite you to check that out. It's going to be well worth watching. I know, because I just know. All right, and Spirit Cafe is actually on Wednesday at noon Eastern time. And myself and my beloved sister from another mother, Cheryl Rogers, we're going to be talking to Kathy Mastriani. And she is a minister in CSL, but she has a remarkable story of healing. And we're going to talk about domestic violence. We're going to talk about what happens when we get caught up in it, but also how we can transform and create a new reality, and how we can shift things for coming generations. It doesn't always have to be this way, that's for certain. And I have my podcast, and you can check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called Healing Revealed. And I share meditations and stories and talks and whatever. It's a bunch of different messages, but all of it based around the idea of you can heal your life. And I know that we all can. So I invite you to check out the podcast. Well, like always, like every spiritual community, we do have bills to pay, of course. And so we welcome your support in supporting this work that we do. I hope it is meaningful to you and providing you with some kind of insight or joy or possibility. And stick around at the end of the service because we do have a conversation time at the end. And if you'd like to donate to CSL on the Lake, you can do that on our website. Just hit the give link, or you can send an e-transfer to csladmin@cslonthelake.com. Either way, we welcome your generosity of time, talent, and treasure. Well, let us join together in consciousness as we close tonight's service. It is in the quiet of my mind that I find my true self, that I awaken to that which is above and beyond my human reality, and I welcome the journey, the possibility. I feel alive and awake and aware. I feel a sense of unity with the divine presence, which means I am powerful. I'm powerful to create, to be. I know that it is safe to feel, to laugh, to live, to be in life fully. And so I surrender myself into this truth, into this idea. And as I do that, oh, what a blessing, what a joy. So I'm grateful for tonight. I'm grateful for this time together, and I'm grateful for all that comes from it. And I welcome the blessings, the ups, the downs, the all of it. I welcome life. And with a grateful, grateful heart, I release these ideas into the law of mind, knowing it is done. All is well. And so it is. All right, I'm going to fix it so that you can unmute yourselves and participate in conversation. And I'm going to stop the recording.